Hi there, in this screencast I'm going to get the bird jumping to respond to the space key. Okay, so in some ways the bird jumping, or actually I shouldn't say jumping, I should say flying upward when the user presses the space key, is a little bit like our button bashing game in that you want to have it so they have to release the key before they kind of flap upward again. So I'm going to make a variable up in the bird class that is going to be private. It's going to be a boolean. Oops, looks like I already made it. It's going to be called can flap. All right, and then I can't remember if I made it in an earlier variable or an earlier screencast, but I'm also making a string variable called bird state that's just going to keep track of exactly what the state of the bird at any given moment. And bird state is going to be set equal to flapping initially. So in the constructor of bird, I'm going to make bird state be assigned the value flapping and can flap be assigned the value true. So I only want the bird to flap when the game state is in running mode. So I'm going to go down to the act method of bird, and I already have a if statement that checks to see what the value of the game state is at any given moment, and if it's in startup mode it basically causes the bird to fly and kind of wobble up and down. When the game is in running mode, I'm going to, right now I'm animating the bird, but now I need to check to see if the user has hit the space key. So I'm going to say if greenfoot.is key down space, and then okay, so I sort of like the wobble count variable. I'm going to have to make a count variable for him flying up and down. So let me make a variable that's called flap count. Alright, and it looks like I already did. And this count variable is going to control his movement in the flap sequence. So in the constructor, right underneath bird state equals flapping and can flap equals true, I'm going to put flap count equals 0. Alright. Okay, so now when they press the space key, what I need to, not only do they need to press the space key, but the variable can flap needs to be set to true. So just like that boolean variable can press or something like that in our button bashing game, I also, when they press the button, we need to check to see if not only the key is down, but they're allowed to press the button. In which case I'm going to say can flap equals false, and I'm going to say bird state equals flapping, and flapping is going to mean he's kind of going up and down in his flap sequence. And I'm going to say flap count equals 0. Okay, and now I'm going to also check to see if the key is not in the space key is not in the down position. Because if it's not in the down position at any given moment, that means they're allowed to press it and start the flap sequence. So I'm going to say can flap equals true. Alright, so now I'm ready to control the flap sequence where he goes up and down. So I'm going to say if bird state dot equals flapping, then Okay, so I'm gonna have to do my best guesstimate of what the timing of the flap sequence should be. So if I go and look at the actual game, or at least the online version of it, when it looks like it happens pretty quickly, all in 1 second. And if you look at it, he kind of rotates upwards and then goes up and then starts to rotate downwards and then flies nose down into the ground. So I'm going to say if count is less than 20, set location, get x, and get y minus 2. Okay, and then I also want to rotate him by maybe, let's see, if I rotate him 1 degree each time, that would mean by the time that's over, he will have rotated 40 degrees. So let's see how, yeah, it looks like he eventually rotates to 45 degrees upwards. Alright, so I'm going to say set location, get y minus 2. And then I'm going to say set rotation, and then it'll be get rotation, and then I believe it's going to be minus 1, and we'll see if that works. Let me make this less than and not equal to. Okay, so now I'm going to run it, and let's see what happens when I press the space key. Ooh, I still have an error. So I'm probably missing a closed curly brace. I'm guessing. Yes, I am. Alright, now let's... Oh, and this is not count, it's flap count. Alright, it looks like... oh, I think I need to start the game. Alright, let me pause it and figure out what this video and see if I can figure out what's going on there. Alright, I quickly figured it out, and that is I forgot to increment flap count. So I need to say flap count plus plus, so that each time the method executes, flap count will be 1 more. Alright, so now let's try it again. Okay, that's just a little bit too slow. So let me make him still go the same height, but let's have it happen in half the time, and let's so I'm going to make flap count be less than 10, and I'm going to have him go up by 4 each time, and then I'm going to have his rotation change by, let's see, 4 each time. Alright, let's try it now. Alright, let's try it again. Okay, that's not too bad. Good enough for now. Alright. Okay, so I found a problem, and the problem is I wasn't distinguishing between the bird flying straight and flapping up and down. So when they press S, the bird, when the game state is running, let's see, you know what? If they press, when they start the game running and they don't press anything, the bird immediately starts to fall. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go into my world, and when they start the game, I'm going to have another bird state, and that bird state is going to be falling. So not only am I going to change the state of the bird to be, let me think about it again. Okay, so I need to set I'm going to need to set the state of the bird from my world, the my world class. So to do that, since bird state is a private variable, I'm going to make a setter variable called set bird state. So I'm going to go down here outside of the act method. I'm going to say public string set bird state, and I'm going to say string bs, and I'm going to say bird state, which is the instance variable, the private variable of the bird class, equals bs. No pun intended. Okay. Alright, so now let's see, what is it saying I am missing here? Oh, this is just a void method, not, it doesn't return a value. Okay, so now over here when the game is running, I'm going to when they press the key to start, I'm going to say set bird, I'm going to say, oh, what is the name of my bird variable? The name of my bird variable is bird. So I'm going to say bird.set bird state, and I'm going to say falling. Okay. So now that should fix that. Okay, and now when I hit the space key, nothing's happening. So let me go and look at it again. Okay, so let's see. He flies when the game is running and the, let's see. Okay, so I think I realized that when the game is running, he's either flapping or falling. So when I'm going to restructure my in the act method of the bird, when the game state is set to being running, let me make it so that you can see a little bit more of this. I'm going to either make him flap or fall. So and he's not going to start, he can start flapping at any time based on whether he presses the user presses the space key or not. So I'm going to move that where it checks for the is key down, and I'm moving that to the very top of my else if. So and then let me fix the spacing, or the indenting. Alright, so now if he's flapping, that's when he's flying upwards. As soon as he's reaches a certain point, he automatically starts to fall. So he's animated. If you look at the actual game, when I start it, and when I press the S key is when he is flapping. When he reaches the top of his little flap sequence, he starts to fall and he stops being animated. He just starts rotating around. So that means when he is in the flapping state, I'm going to move this into here so that the flap sequence where he's moving up and down only happens when he's flapping, when he's in the flapping mode. Alright. Okay, so to review his act method, the bird's act method, I have, I divide the act method into different game states. One is when the game state is in startup mode, in which case he's animated, right, and he's wobbling up and down. Okay, then if the game state is in running mode, then it checks to see if the user's pressed the S key and can flap is true, and it immediately sets can flap to false, changes his state to flapping. If it wasn't already, sets the flap count variable to 0. Then it checks to see if the key down or the S space key is up, in which case it sets can flap to true. Then it checks to see if the bird state is in the flapping mode. It animates him if he's in the flapping mode, and let's see. I'm off in my curly braces. I need a closed curly brace there. Alright, so this is all happening when the game is running and the bird is flapping. Alright, so that means this all needs to come back by 1. And alright, and that means I have one too many closed curly braces here. Okay, so let's, before we even do anything else, let's get it so that he starts falling when he reaches kind of a certain height in the flapping mode. So when he's flapping, I'm going to say if flap count equals 10, then bird state equals falling. Alright, so that'll get it out. The game is running. That will take it out of the flapping section of this if statement. And then I'm going to say else if bird state dot equals falling. And if he's falling, I'm going to say, let's see, if flap count, okay, so I want him to be nose down, so that would mean rotating him 80 degrees. Because up above here I rotated him 40 degrees. No, let's see. Let's do, I think I rotated him 36 degrees. So, oh yeah, you know what? Let me change this a little bit and let me move flap count to down here. Right. Alright, so now I did rotate him 40 degrees. And so I'm going to say if flap count less than 30, because in 10 he rotated up 40, so it would take another 20 executions of the ACK method for him to, well, actually not. 40 would get him at a negative 45 degree. 30 would get him at a negative 45 degree, or 45 degree angle downward. I need to go another 45 degrees. So let me say 40. And then I'm going to say set rotation, get rotation plus 4. Alright, and then I'm going to say if, let's see, get location dot get y is greater than, let's see, 100 pixels up from the bottom of the screen. So that would be world dot get height minus 100. Then I would say set location get x get y plus 2. And I still need to increase flap count by 1. And I'm just arbitrarily going to say if flap count equals, let's say 200, flap count equals 0. And I do this because flap count will continue. The bird will, when he hits the ground, he's going to stop falling, but his state is still going to be equal to falling. Well, you know what? Let me do this. Let's say oh, you know what? This should be less than. Okay, and then else I'm gonna say bird state equals stopped, and then flap count plus plus. Okay, so I think that should do it. Let's go see if it actually works. Okay, I just figured out that my bird never goes into falling because I have a curly brace in the wrong spot. So if you look at it, when the game is running, he's either going to be flapping or falling, so that, or stopped. So that means that if he's flapping, I do all of this. Then if he's falling, I should do all of that. And then if he stopped, I should do nothing at all. So that would mean the falling else if needs to be at the same level of indentation as the flapping, because it's either one or the other. So I had it buried inside the bird being flapping, so it was only doing what I wanted it to do one time and then doing nothing. Alright, so I'm going to fix that. Alright, and means I'm going to have one too many closed curly braces. And now let's see what we got here, if it's going to work. Let's hope it will. Alright, here we go. Let's try it again. Okay, so now my problem is he doesn't always go to the right angle when I press the space bar. It's dependent on where he was before, and I think I know the issue. The issue is that each time he's flapping, I set his rotation to what it was before, plus a certain number of degrees. But that's really, I want to make sure that every time I press the flap key, he starts off at the same flying horizontally. So when the game is running, I'm going to, and they immediately press the space key, I'm going to set his rotation to be 0. Meaning, alright, and let's see if that works. Okay, so that's good. Now it's not really moving him up, and then it's not really moving him all the way down. So now I need to figure out what's going on there. Okay, so I don't actually need this if bird state equals flapping, because he would already be flapping according to the if state. Just the location of this code, I would know that he's flapping. So I'm going to take that out. So as you can see, hopefully you know by now at this point in the year, writing code is an iterative process where you fix a few things, you check to see if it works, it doesn't work but in a different way, so you go back and try to change things. So it's really a massive exercise in problem solving. Alright, so now let's try it again. Okay, so that's looking better. Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit better. So when I start him and I press the S key, he's not going up at all, and he's immediately starting to fall. So let me see if I can figure this one out now. Okay, so I figured out, let me change his falling to be minus 50. And let me do this. When he's falling, instead of worrying about flap count, let's worry about what his rotation actually is. So I'm going to say if get rotation is less than, I think it's 90, then set rotation, get rotation plus 4. Okay, and then when he stopped, I'm going to say world.set game state finished. Okay, because that means he's hit the ground. Alright. Alright, so now let me give it a shot. Alright, so now he's not rotating. Okay, so I think I discovered what my problem is, and my problem is that when the game starts, in my world, when it detects that they've started the game, it also immediately makes them start falling. So so what I really want is him to be flapping when they start the game. So when I'm down here in my world and they press the space key to start the game, I need to have him be flapping. Okay, and then I also need to set his flap count variable to be 0. I think it should already be 0 because when you create him in the bird's constructor, I believe we initialize it to be 0 and we set can flap to be true. Alright, so instead of setting can flap to be true, I want to set can flap to be false. And now let's try it. Alright. Okay, so I think I know what the problem is there, and the problem is there that while I was debugging, I changed this to 40, and I want it to be 10. Alright, so now let's try it. Okay, so that's good, except that now it is not rotating him downward when he's falling. So I think when I was trying to debug it, I changed something. Okay, I think I figured out what the problem is, and I did so by actually putting on the screen what the rotation of the bird is at any given time. And the way I did that is, you may have never noticed that I made in my world, there was, before you even started the game, there was this debug text object that got added to the screen. So it was actually added to the screen, the middle of the screen at all times. You just never saw it because text was set to being nothing at all. So basically then all I need to do is in the ACK method, I just needed to set the text of that debug text object to be the rotation of the bird, to see what the bird's rotation was. And when I did that, it became apparent that I thought the bird's rotation was going negative when it started off at 0, as you can see, but instead of going negative, it was actually, when I was subtracting 4 from it each time, instead of having a rotation of -4, it was actually immediately giving it a rotation of 356 degrees, which of course would be the same thing as a -4 degree rotation, because in Greenfoot 0 degree rotation is due east, and then as you add to a sprite's rotation or an actor object's rotation, you basically rotate them in a clockwise direction. So to fix the problem, I went into the bird class, and when he's falling, I said if his rotation is either greater than 319 or less than 90, instead of just his rotation being less than 90. So, and I'm also going to speed up how quickly he rotates around to fall. So I'm going to let me do 6 and see if that looks a little more realistic. Okay, so now I'm going to run it, start it. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, believe it or not, we finally come to the end of this massively long screencast, but it is a major portion of the game, and I hope you got it all straightened out, and I'm able to help you with it because I know I've been making changes to it just constantly as the screencast went on. Alright, cheers.